Tapping in.
Are we live?
Is this good or should I turn it up more? This should look good.
This is good. This is good.
Cool.
How am I coming through?
You good?
Oh, we flying, baby. We flying, baby.
Soul plane.
It's the soul plane. Yo, so recommended stumble upon, right? The stumble upon conversation, which is the relevance of religious holidays. Now, quite frankly, you know, it's a very difficult. It's not a difficult conversation per se, but as you had said, there's a lot of things to consider on the spectrum. The first things that I thought about, right, is that as time goes on, and we've seen many holidays now being a lot of holidays like Columbus Day has been stripped. We have seen the removing of certain celebrations and holiday. Thanksgiving is on its way out, right? And so even a lot of the other religious holidays that dominate the calendar, the question is, what is there going to be relevance for religious holidays going into the future?
I think it's hard to remove things that have been institutionalized to a certain extent, right? There are certain things that we just start doing and they fit into the rhythm in our lives in such a way that we don't ever want to remove them. So, right, another example, at least here in the States, is that our school runs on like an agricultural type calendar. Our break for the summer is time that was really important for, you know, when most people were farmers, for as much labor, AKA kids, to be home as possible to do the work, right? As that shifted, as we started doing different jobs, we never got rid of that school summer break. And I'm personally glad every school summer break I ever had, I appreciated, you dig me? But it's one of those things that becomes entrenched. And I think in very much the same way, a lot of rules do, you know, a lot of holidays do. We don't want to let go of those. I certainly cherish days that I know I have off that aren't PTO, whether I observe the religious holiday or not. So from even a human perspective, did you observe Easter in any different type of way? Have you ever?
I grew up in a very religious household and a very religious family, much like, you know, a lot of Black people have. And so over time, a lot of the holidays just kind of fall and just become days of celebration outside of days of having actual spiritual either practice or relevance to it. Obviously, there's a whole Sunday going into church thing. There's that element of it, but then outside of that, what else does the celebration entail outside of a day off and outside of day of shopping and things of that nature? So, you know, for me, as I'm getting older, I must say that how I practice religious holidays is definitely changing. And I'm starting to ask myself more and more the origins of the holidays and what they mean, and then kind of deciding on that point of view if that is something that I want to be able to support, or that is something that, you know, deserves of me to be more cautious about how I celebrate it, a la Thanksgiving. That is the celebration of the murder of a whole group of people. You know, I don't feel comfortable celebrating under those times. But if we change it and then we make it like Friendsgiving or something of that sort, then it becomes, you know, a lot more relevant to me.
Yeah. And I think you're speaking to something a lot of people probably are participating in and witnessing, is that people are taking these holidays and creating their own definition of it, right? A lot of people, and I feel like Black folks in particular have always done this, right? A lot of holidays for Black folks, 4th of July, Labor Day, Memorial Day, have just become, we cooking out. And that's cool, you know what I mean? Me personally, for Easter, right, I'm going over to my mom's just to have dinner, right? Like we have conversations about religion sometimes, just as I think we've matured, our relationship has matured, and I've matured to a place where we can have those conversations on more equal footing rather than her being prescriptive of me. But I don't anticipate this being any more religious than any of our other interactions, but it is a time that we are going to take advantage of. Why not, to be together, right? And I think a lot of holidays, whether their roots are in religion or not, can be that. Thanksgiving is one example. I've had conversations with homies about even like Valentine's Day, right? And how, yeah, it's corny if you get too wrapped up in the commercial side of it, but it's a reminder to just show the people you love them. That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Even with Valentine's Day, seeing the adoption of, say, Galentine's Day, which is women celebrating each other and taking care of each other. I would like to suggest Valentine's Day for the pals.
For the pals, for the homies.
For the pals.
Valentine's Day. Hey, I like it. It might catch on.
We can make t-shirts of that, dude. That could be our first merchandise right there.
Let's maybe not our first. Let's come up with something a little bit more neutral, just a regular all the way live t-shirt, and then the Palantines.
And the Palantines. Yeah, if you want those Palantines, please hit us in the comments right there. Let us know how the people are feeling about that. We'll get that over to you ASAP. All three people comment.
It's gonna be real hard to top Palantines as an episode title, but we can do it.
We'll find a way. We'll find a way to it. And that's on that topic, right? This is where Yuval Noah, who wrote *Sapiens*, *Homo Deus*, the 21 Lessons to the 21st Century, on 21 Lessons for the 21st Century, he highlights the almost cyclical nature that ideologies tend to have over civilizations over a particular point in time, right? So, for instance, the concept of the concept of democracy, for instance, was a galvanizing ideology that could even allow worlds to go into wars over the protection of this concept of democracy and of communism and of capitalism and all of that, right? And so over time, you have these various different ideologies that can band people together. And once they lose the capacity to be able to band people together, then it kind of it dissipates, right? It begins to dissipate. So, for instance, the example that he uses is that if you were to take, for instance, someone in, let's say, for instance, the Middle East, just because we understand the stringency of that of the religion in that part of the world and how it's interpreted there. If you were to ask them, would you want to move to Germany, right? A country where it's a lot more free, maybe not so much for people from the UAE, but would you like to move to, say, the US? Or actually, now that I think about it, dude, those are two terrible places to go if you're from there. All to say.
Door number 3, please.
And I was cooking.
Good. Back. Turbulence.
Is the price you pay
for flying high.
Yes, sir. As I was getting to that, it's just that that is the episode of the day. We're on the soul play today, son.
Big fact.
But you feel me what I'm saying about Yuval Noah? Like, people are now starting to take into consideration different things regarding where they want to live, the people they want to marry, and even globalization and the cross sections of communities. It makes the all to say that, with religion, it's hard to now galvanize an entire group of people in mass, not in pockets, but in mass, behind the concept of religion. Fascinating theory.
That is a fascinating theory. I think, maybe that influence is waning in a lot of ways, right? I think there are still structures that speak to the ways that people have been galvanized by religion, mega churches, right, in whatever country that they might exist, right? I think show that. I think churches are still in certain communities, like an anchor institution. But I think it's really interesting to think about how those ideas do take hold and then are kind of untangled and then start to dissipate. Sure wish racism would dissipate. Man, we've been trying to untangle that now for a while. But it is interesting. And I think what we see with racism and what we see with a lot of these issues, whether it be religion, is that these things that I think you're right about the cyclical nature of them, their influence kind of dissipating, but they hold on to it. And we see extremism form when there is a less of a reaction from something that used to hold a lot of weight, dictate a lot of social norms, like religion, right? Like racism, like sexism, right? We see a lot of backlash and people try to hold on to that.
Yeah. And it's really, It's really fascinating because when you look at the statistics of it, the number of people attending churches is decreasing across the globe.
Mm.
The if you'd call it the acquisition rate, you know, the rate at which religions are now taking on new members and things, new members and new congregants, that number is starting to go down as well. It's something very fascinating that I think speaks on the realities of the change of time that are at hand. Whereas the world is such a different place. The world is such a different place, and out the rules that the world is governed by now, um, so happens to have to include the whole world because we have access to it.
Yeah. The world isn't religious anymore, it's spiritual.
Yes, yes,
Right.
yes.
And as
I
cliche
like
as we
that.
might have heard that a lot from a lot of I think that phrase has been tossed around a lot, but I think it rings true in the sense that people are less worried about maybe not less worried about the idea of what happens when you die and this code that of rules that you have to follow strictly to gain your way into a certain afterlife or to live the way that God wants you to live, whatever whoever that God might be. But I think you are seeing a lot of people be much more interested in a way of interacting with other people, in a way of living a healthy life, in a way of living a life that is fulfilling. And I think when you start to simplify to some of those more simple questions than those big overarching ones, I think you start to see the roots of spirituality versus that religion. And I think that is becoming a lot more prominent. People are just trying to figure out what type of energy they can carry to get through the day, whether they're using the words like energy or not, you know?
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. What I hate about this new spiritual, not religion culture is the many different. Granted, spirituality is a very subjective thing, and you can be able to take it on and digest it and relate to it as you so see fit through your lenses. But there are a lot of things that get the blanket over spirituality. When it's just like this not spirituality, y'all. This hot yoga.
But that's part of it. That's whoever's journey, you know what I mean? And if hot yoga is, if somewhere amidst the sweat and the latex and the farts, you can find a space to start to meditate and find a way of slowing your own thoughts down that's useful to you, then that can be a door to something more spiritual. I think part of it, all of it, is just accepting wherever people might be at on their journey, whether that path intersects with yours or not. And I think
Yeah.
that, that is something that religious in its best form teaches, but I think that people are looking outside of religion for things that fulfill them in that way. What else do they
I think
want?
about it that.
Show us.
Jumping off of that, and actually, hot yoga is such a terrible example because that there is a lot of spirituality in that, admittedly. But for instance, our over reliance on astrology, right? You'll hear people attach themselves to astrology, and then from there, it's not just about your star; it's about the moon, and then it's about your morning moon, and then your morning star, and then it's about the sun. That what sun phase was it when you were born, and whether Mercury is in retrograde or not.
That's such a spaghetti-tarius thing to say. For sure. You're 1,000% a spaghetti-tarius. Like, I could just tell by the way that you dismissed astrology, bro. Don't diss
Oh,
astrology.
oh yeah, I'm a spaghettitarius. Don't call me dinosaur names on my podcast. That won't happen.
My bad, you're a Capricorn, dude. That's Cap.
That is ridiculous. That is absolutely ridiculous.